Part of your client's emergency plan is ensuring that they have enough supplies in an emergency. Different words are used to describe these emergency supply kits. Some of the terms are go bag, bug out bag, and evacuation kit or bag. This training will give you all the information you need to start building up emergency supplies with your client. This lesson will cover the following topics in more detail. What is a go kit? What should be in your client's kit? Additional items to add, building a kit on a budget, and what your client will do with their kit. Let's talk about the importance of a go kit. Disasters strike at all hours of the day, so having essential items ready to go allows your client to get out quickly. Having essentials ready to go removes the uncertainty of, did I grab everything I need? And they also offer peace of mind, allowing your client to focus on executing their emergency plan, and they take up relatively little space. By the end of this training, you will be able to identify why your client needs a go kit, identify what items should be in their kit, determine additional items they should add, building a kit on any budget over time, how to properly maintain their kit and storage considerations, and apply tips for making a go kit to make a shelter-in-place kit. As discussed earlier, making a go kit is part of a basic personal emergency plan. This is one of the basic preparedness actions you should take with your client to best set them up for success. Each person in their household should have their own kit, as no two people's needs and preferences are exactly the same. I mentioned earlier there are commercially available kits, but those get expensive very quickly. However, for those with limited time and expendable funds, they are a great option. Just make sure that you work with your client to add items that they need, such as medications and important documents. Most kits out there are meant to fit in a backpack, duffel bag, or small storage container. Just remember to keep accessibility in mind. That means don't pack a 50-pound bag, unless of course their needs require the bag to weigh that much. If that is the case, consider splitting the bag up into smaller bags while keeping accessibility in mind, because you don't want them to have to grab 8 different bags. When building or buying your client a go kit, the rule of thumb is to have at least 3 days worth of supplies. That is, 3 days worth of food and water. Remember, this food is meant for survival, so there is no need to pack elaborate meals. Think of shelf-stable, high-calorie foods such as packets of peanut butter, dehydrated meals, and canned goods. Ideally, try to pack 7 days worth of supplies. However, 3 days per person is the gold standard and should be sufficient. Some of the items your kit should contain, as stated, are the food and water, minimum 3-day supply, a radio, preferably a hand crank radio, a NOAA weather radio, a flashlight, a basic first aid kit, extra batteries, a whistle, a dust mask, and N95 is best, plastic sheeting and duct tape, personal hygiene and sanitation items, tools such as a wrench or pliers, a manual can opener, local maps, and a cell phone with a portable charger. So here's a list of additional items to the basic supplies needed by most everyone. This is where you want to work with your client to make sure to include items that meet their individual needs. Do they have pets or a service animal? If so, pack a kit for them as well with basics such as a blanket, foldable bowl, and food. What you see here on this list is a mix of vital and comfort items. Medications are a huge consideration if your client relies on them. Work with their doctor and insurance provider to see if you can obtain an emergency supply of important medications. Having at least 30 days worth is sufficient, but if they can manage to obtain 90 days worth, do that. What I would suggest is to constantly cycle out these medications. For example, when you or your client submits a refill request for their normal medications, not their emergency supply, place the newest ones in their emergency kit and have them use the ones that were in their kit. That way, they're cycling out the older medications and have the maximum shelf life of those medications in their kit, since they are likely to expire by the time they need their kit if they aren't cycling those older medications out. So some of these other items to consider are soap or hand sanitizer, like prescription medications, we talked about it, but don't forget about over-the-counter medications, things like Advil, infant necessities if there's a child, pet supplies as we talked about. It's also a good idea to have cash, preferably small bills or traveler's checks, copies of important documents such as insurance plans, policies, driver's license, sleeping bag or blankets, a change of clothes and durable shoes. One thing they can do is take an old pair of shoes that they were going to throw out and just put them in their kit, and that way they have them in an emergency. A fire extinguisher, matches, feminine supplies and personal hygiene items, mess kits, so like plates, forks, etc. Camp set is fine. Paper and pencil, always good to have manual ways to write things down. And then books, games, or other activities for kids, or just for them as well to keep them entertained during downtime. So as I stated, there are commercially available kits that are ready to go. You simply add in important items like medications and documents. If those are not an option, work with your client to make their own. And if budget is a concern, I will cover how to make your kit on any budget shortly.
Being prepared is a part of who you are. But it's especially important in the case of a disaster. It's up to everyone to build a kit that contains the things you need to survive: food and water, medication and supplies, as well as any important documents you may need. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Be informed, make a plan, build a kit, get involved. Visit Ready.Gov/myplan.
The key to making a plan is giving your client a say in their plan. Make sure that you are including your client in the Go Kit making process, because as the video says, no one knows them or their loved one better than they do. It can be expensive for your client to put a kit together in one shopping trip, especially if they don't have any of the needed supplies or on a tight budget. Don't worry if they're on a budget, there are still options for them. We all start somewhere with our kits, and having something is better than nothing. However, if you work with your client and follow this shopping plan from the American Red Cross, they can spread the cost out over 5 months. The best part is, if they already have some of the items, they can skip them for that week or work ahead to build their kit faster. That said, you can work with your client to customize the shopping list to meet their needs and tastes, as this is just a suggestion for the basics. They can double or triple the weeks to finish building their kit sooner, or when building kits for more than just themselves. They can even spread it out over a longer period of time if needed. Work with them to properly store their items. They can use storage bins instead of a backpack or bag, since these are often and can be cheaper options. I recommend using a clear bin so they can see what is in it. If not, make sure to work with them to label it so they grab the right bin if they are evacuating. Have them use one that is a different color than the other bins they have, that is, if they have other storage bins. When deciding where to store their kit, make sure it is accessible and in a place that is easy for them to remember. At home, work with them to place it in a designated location, such as near their primary exit or their vehicle if they have one. Also, have your client consider building kits for other locations they frequent, such as at work if they have a job. If they spend a lot of time at work, it is good to have a kit there as well. In addition to their primary kit, have them consider putting together a smaller one for their car, again, if applicable. That way, if they get stuck on the road for a few hours, they have items to survive, such as warm layers like a blanket and snacks or food items that will keep them feeling full. It is a really good idea to make sure their car kit includes a basic first aid kit as well. So what happens if your client finds themselves in a situation where it is better to shelter in place rather than evacuate? We will cover these situations in more detail later in a different training, don't worry. For now, let's explore how your client can prepare for this scenario by storing food beyond what is typically in their fridge or pantry. Perhaps you have heard the term prepper. These individuals typically have stockpiles of food, water, and supplies in preparation for a large-scale disaster or event where they would have to survive for months on end on their own. Many of these individuals even have their own bunkers. The events they are prepping for are very low likelihood events such as a nuclear war or end of the world type scenario. While this is an extreme thing to plan for, it is also not unreasonable. However, when talking about shelter-in-place kits, I am not talking about this level of preparation. When building this type of kit, plan for a minimum stockpile of supplies for 7 days per person, but ideally 2 weeks. These kits take up more space, so if your client is short on space, have them utilize spaces such as under their bed. What you see in this picture, I would consider the supply levels of someone who is early on in a prepper stage. In fact, there is a television show called Doomsday Preppers on National Geographic. You can find episodes on YouTube if you're interested in this level of preparation and what goes into it. It is common to see supply levels that look like a small convenience store in the basements or bunkers of Doomsday Preppers. This video will cover how to create your own shelter-in-place kit.
Now I'd like to show you the items that are in my shelter-in-place kit. All the things that I have in my kit fit in this plastic tote. This plastic tote would probably be in addition to an already established 72-hour kit that you would have in your home. Or if you want to incorporate the two, just making sure that you know what's in the kit and what you might need to add to your 72-hour kit. I really like that I was able to put a label on my kit so that if I use any of these materials, then I can replace them and know what I have in the box. One of the first things I have in my kit is plastic sheeting. As I mentioned, you'll want to cover any open areas to keep contaminants out of your safe place. A good idea would be to take the plastic sheeting ahead of time and measure your doorways, measure your windows, measure your vented areas, and have pre-cut plastic sheets. That will speed up the process of securing your area. If you don't have any plastic sheeting and you're in an emergency and you're in a hurry, you can also use something as simple as a heavy-duty shower curtain liner to cut up and use to secure those areas. Of course, it's a great idea to have duct tape and scissors in your kit as well so that you can accomplish these tasks quickly when you need to. Other items to have in your kit are safety items such as safety glasses and masks in case of airborne hazards. Great things to have in your kit include first aid items. You have a small first aid kit, some water purifying tablets, even just hand sanitizer, and this is an emergency blanket. And then pairing with that, this is a flashlight, but it's also a radio to be able to receive those emergency messages while you may be in your safe place. Other items to have is a small food supply. As I mentioned, this kit isn't a full-out 72-hour kit, so it wouldn't have 3 days supply of food and water, but usually when you're sheltering in place, it's for a short time, possibly a few hours. And that's something to think of if you're providing a kit for your children to go to school, something they can keep in their backpack, a snack, something that can keep them calm and comfortable. And lastly, if you don't have anything to do for a few hours and to keep your nerves calm, it's a great idea to have some entertainment, maybe some card games, a book to read, even some hard candy for your kids just to bring that little bit of comfort in a stressful situation. Here are some things to think about when you're preparing your shelter-in-place plan or kit for your family. What items do you already have on hand? Where are they located? What items might you need to purchase to add to your kit? Do you want to incorporate it with your already established 72-hour kit, or do you want it to be separate? All these things are important so that you can set a goal and make a plan so that your family can feel comforted in a time of emergency if you happen to have to shelter in place.
The resource links below can be found in the TCRC website in the Rescue Tri-County section, and also in the description below this video. The first resource is to the Ready.Gov website, where there's more information about building a Go Kit. The second resource is that guide from American Red Cross on building your emergency supplies over 21 weeks. The third one is a disability-specific supply consideration list for emergency kits. And then with a more business focus, there is a business continuity guide if you want to consider that for your business or organization as far as planning for disaster goes. Again, this is the time where you could ask questions if I was presenting this live or in person, but since it's a recording, go ahead and please send any questions you have to the TCRC ERC. My contact information can be found above. So in summary, today we covered the importance of building a Go Kit, the basic supplies to include in your client's kit, additional considerations for their kit, building a kit on any budget by spreading out supply purchases, storage considerations for their kit, and why they should consider building a shelter-in-place kit. Once again, thank you so much for your time and your commitment to safety and disaster preparedness. As always, I welcome any and all feedback on this training. And lastly, these are just two references to the material contained in this presentation. You can find the links on the TCRC website or in the description of the video below.